You are about to go through a very interesting Bible lesson as taught by Jesus. And we entitled this Two Views of the Flood as told by Jesus. I believe this lesson is going to answer some questions for people wanting to know more about the rapture and what happens on this earth to believers after the rapture. We need to do a little background study on physical conditions here on the earth prior to the flood. And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. For the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, but there went up a mist from the earth. There was no such thing as rain prior to the flood of Noah. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. This is the first time that we have any reference in the Bible to raining. Noah had no clue what cause it to rain meant. He'd never seen it. There was no record of it. He has to take this one by faith. And so we can just imagine for 7 days, Noah and his family went into the ark. God shut the door. And they get up in the morning and they look around the ark, they feed the animals, and they look over the edge and they see people walking around, going to work, children playing, life as usual. And I can't help but imagine that his wife and family began to ask him about this rain. Well, what is rain anyway? And Noah would have to respond, Well, I don't know. I can hear one of them asking, Is the word rain even in the Bible? Well, no, it really isn't at that point. But then the rains came, and the waters became deeper around the boat. And Noah said to his family, This is rain. Now let's go inside. In this study, we have to do some compare and contrast. This is not difficult. They teach children games like this so that they can become a little bit more attentive to detail. The two doors are different. The dog food is different. Spot over the dog's eye is gone in the other picture. And so is one of the flowers. Okay, we don't have a picture, but we do have some text. Can you find the differences in Luke 17 and in Matthew 24? Let's read them. And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. Now let's read Matthew 24. But as in the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Can you spot the differences? I've highlighted them for you in yellow. in the days of the Son of Man, or the coming of the Son of Man. Then we have something in orange, for as in the days that were before the flood, those words don't even appear in Luke, they did eat, or they were eating. A little different. And the flood came and destroyed them all. Get it, orange, a phrase that doesn't appear in Luke. And knew not until the flood came and took them all away. And at the end, in the day when the Son of Man is revealed, or the coming of the Son of Man be. Nah, you say not much different. Well, that's because you're reading this in English. The Bible was written in Greek. Jesus spoke to his disciples in Greek. So let's read that with the consideration of the original biblical language. I know you're freaking. Well, we're going to start Greeking. Let's look at the Greek alphabet just for a refresher. You already know this stuff. There's alpha, there's beta. That's where we get the word alphabet. I guess it's all Greek to me. Gamma, delta. You've heard all of these. Iota, you know what that is. If you take it math, you understand pi. Sigma, omega. Well, Jesus is the alpha and the omega, the first and the last letters of the Greek alphabet. Oh, and then there's Omicron. If you've been through COVID, you've heard that word. That's a Greek letter. And if you've ever been on College Row, the Greek row, you know that there is Phi and Kappa. Look, you already know half the Greek alphabet. Let's move forward here. Can you spot the differences? Well, Jesus used different words. Hemera or parousia. Esthio or entrogo. UNESCO ou apolumi or ariohapas. Apolupto or parousia again. Oh, 9 differences in that small amount of text. Well, I can find you one more. In Luke, it says Jesus entered into a certain village, and when he was demanded of the Pharisees when the kingdom of God should come, and then he answered them. But Matthew 24, Jesus went out and departed from the temple. He's in Jerusalem, not a village. And his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. So what we see here is 2 different topics, 2 different groups, and 2 different responses concerning the story of the flood. When he's talking to the Pharisees, this is what he says. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it also be in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until. Now let's take a look at that days of Noah. You find it referenced 2 places here, Genesis in the Old Testament and 1 Peter in the New Testament. And all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. As it was in the days of Noah, it could be a very long period of time. Or it could be a little shorter, which sometimes were disobedient when the long suffering of God waited in the days of Noah while the ark was the preparing. So this phrase can either be the entire lifetime of Noah, almost 1,000 years, or the time it took to build the ark, probably around 100 years. But I can assure you, it's not an instantaneous period of time. And then it says, until the day that Noah entered into the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. And the word that Jesus used there is polyoumi, destroyed them. And we know who this is in reference to. Those that drowned, those that died, those that were not on the ark. And so when Jesus is talking to these Pharisees, and they're wanting to know about the kingdom coming, he's basically saying, I don't think you're going to be doing too well when the kingdom comes. Note, it does not say in Luke 17 that the wicked knew not. That phrase does not appear when Jesus is talking to the Pharisees about the coming of the kingdom and their ultimate pending judgment. Okay. We've looked at Luke 17. Now, let's go over to Matthew 24. Different circumstances. He's talking to his disciples. They've asked him some questions. He's giving his responses. And this is what he said to his disciples. As the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming, or the parousia, of the Son of Man be. And this is in reference to a question that they had asked him just previously. Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives. The disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of thy parousia, or coming? And he says, well, this is it right here. This is the way it's going to be at my coming. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying, and given in marriage. Now we need to dissect that sentence a little bit. First of all, who was eating? Well, it says they were. Well, it doesn't tell us who they are. So it could be the people that ultimately are going to perish, but then it definitely could be in reference to Noah and his family. It's interesting that Jesus used a different word in Matthew for eating than he did in Luke. And the word Jesus used in Matthew, he also used again when he told his disciples, except you eat the flesh of the Son of Man, you have no life in you. And so the word Jesus used here for his disciples takes on a very sacred meaning. Doesn't sound like a riotous eating of flesh and partying and banqueting that we've often heard concerning this particular sentence in Scripture. And we've already asked the question then. So who are they that were eating, using this word that Jesus used to describe the meal? Let's use some of our language skills in a simple practice to dissect this sentence. We all know that there are different parts of speech. Noun refers to words or phrases that represent a person, place, or thing, such as John, Seattle, dog. Then there's pronouns, refers to the words that are used instead of the nouns. I, he, she, it, them, that, so forth. And a verb refers to the words that describe action or a state of being. Go, get, stuff like that. Here's some examples of a noun. Tom lives in New York. A pronoun. Did she find the book she was looking for? Verb. I reached home. And then there's other parts of speech. Adverb, adjective, preposition, conjunction, interjection. Fortunately for you, we're not going to look at all that. But we need to look at the rules for pronouns. A pronoun is a word that is used instead of a noun. And there are pronoun reference rules. Whenever pronouns are used, it should be unmistakably clear which noun the pronoun is standing for. A faulty or weak pronoun reference will result in a muddled sentence and a confused reader. Okay, a little practice. John drove the car to Seattle, and then he waited for Mike to meet him there. I've color-coded this for you. John, he, him. He and him are obviously in reference to John and not to Mike. And so we've made the car John's car. Afterwards, he drove his car back to Tacoma. Afterwards, who's he? And whose car is it? Well, from the first sentence, the indication it must be John's car. He's driving it. But it says afterwards, he drove his car back to Tacoma. We have a weak pronoun reference here. Question: who drove the car back to Tacoma, John or Mike? Well, according to grammar rules, Mike drove the car back because he is in reference to the last noun. Afterwards, he drove his car back. And so, that being the case, who owns the car? It appears that John drove Mike's car to Seattle, and then returning back, Mike got into his car and went back to Tacoma. Interesting when you follow the reference rules how the whole context can change. Okay, we did that to help you to understand reference rules for pronouns. What we have here is, in the Greek, 3 verses from Scripture, and I could pull dozens like this. This is a very common Greek phrase. And there it is in Matthew 24. And there it is in Luke chapter 2. And there it is again in Luke chapter 4. And this is what it looks like in the Greek. We put it into a Greek to English translator, and it's a very common phrase, and it simply means we're in. So we go to Luke to see how it's translated. And there, we're in the same country, shepherds, abiding in the field. Okay, that's how it's supposed to be translated. We're in. And so we go to Luke 4:25. But I tell you the truth, many widows were in Israel in the days of Elias. Well, that's a translation that we would expect for this Greek word. But when we look at Matthew 24, we see something a little different. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking. They were? I thought it meant we're in. Got to do a little more research. So we take a look at this in the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, and we find that it is Greek number 2258. And this is what the concordance says. King James Version translates that in the following manner: was 267 times, were 115 times, Had been, 12 times. Had, 11 times. And then there's 42 variations of was. The phrase in Matthew 24 does not require the use of the word they. It's not, the word they is not there in the Greek. And so therefore this could be translated, in the days that were before the flood, there was eating. And I want to show you in Matthew that Matthew, in writing, knows how to write that in Greek. We see this in Matthew 26. And as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed it. And uses a completely different Greek phrase for that. So what's going on here? I asked the question, is the word they added to the sentence to add clarity? And this is the expert response. Yes, the word they was added to the first sentence to clarify or to make the translation sound more natural in English. The Greek sentence can be translated literally as, and I have this here in blue, for as in the days before the flood there were. However, to make the translation sound more natural in English, the word they is often added to make the sentence read, for as in the days before the flood they were. Well, it may sound a little bit more natural in English, but it changes the meaning of what Jesus is saying. Okay, let's go back to the text and see how it looks with what we have just learned. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were, okay, that's questionable, eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and, leaving the space here, knew not, until the flood came and took them. Okay, I have another pronoun here, took them all away. There is no word in the English or the Greek here to reference who knew not. But in our minds, we want to connect it to the they in verse 38. They were eating and they knew not. But there is no word they in the Greek. It's there was eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage. And so in this unspoken reference point, this implied in verse 39, who knew not? We know it's not referring to the they in verse 38. And we have another pronoun, and took them all away. Who is that pronoun in reference to? We understand the reference rules. There must be a noun here somewhere. So we have some questions. And then Jesus said, so also the coming of the Son of Man shall be. Whoa, this is important. He just gave us a lesson and said, I'm giving you some important information, and this is what it's going to be like at the parousia when I return. Then shall two be in the field, one shall be taken. Well, that's in reference to took them all away, and the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, one shall be taken, again in reference to took them all away, and the other left. Watch therefore, for ye, and who is he speaking to is important, know not what hour your Lord doth come. To who is he speaking? He's speaking to the believers. In Luke, he was speaking to the Pharisees, and he's talking to them about the kingdom for you is judgment. But now he's speaking to believers. And what is he telling us about this story? Well, we need to realize that those that knew not in the first part of his lesson is tied to the believers who know not. This is not saying the sinners who would be destroyed knew not. That wasn't in reference in Luke when he talked to the Pharisees. That phrase isn't even there. But now when he's talking to his disciples, he's saying there's going to be a certain amount of information withheld from you. You know not when I'm coming, and during the flood, somebody else didn't know a lot either. But as the days of Noah were, so also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as the days that were before the flood, there was eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark. There's the noun. Grammar would indicate that the last person mentioned is who knew not. Who knew not? Noah knew not. Nothing in the sentence applies a word they in reference to any other group or person. Noah didn't know until the flood came. We began this lesson. Noah and his family are in the ark for 7 days asking questions about why did we build this thing? Why did we pitch it with pitch? Why does it look so much like a fishing boat? Because it's going to rain, and you have no idea what that means until it happens. He took it by faith. But as the days of Noah were, so also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, there was eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. Noah knew not. And it was them, Noah, and those in the ark that were taken away. We know that that reference point doesn't work, but this reference point does. Noah in the ark. So also the coming of the Son of Man shall be. Then shall two be in the field, one shall be taken, just like Noah, his family, and the animals were taken, and the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, one shall be taken, and the other left. Watch therefore, for ye, who? The believers, also know not what hour your Lord does come. It makes a lot of sense when we understand these simple grammar rules. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark. So I want you to think about them entering into the ark and knew not until the flood came and took them all away, those that entered into the ark. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Let's look at this. The word in the Greek that Jesus used here is ario, for take them all away. And it means to lift up, to take up, or away, especially to sail away or to weigh anchor. Whoa, that's interesting. The flood came and took them away. just like a sailing ship. The Greek word used by Jesus in reference to what happened after Noah entered into the ark and the flood waters came can be used as a nautical term for sail away or weigh anchor. It was used this way twice by Luke in Acts in reference to a ship. The implication as to who or whatever was sailing must have included Noah and the boat. Let's take a look at how this is used in the book of Acts. And when the south wind blew softly, supposing that they had obtained purpose, loosing thence, they sailed close by Crete. And there the word is loosing, meaning they weighed anchor. And when they had taken up, they used helps undergirding the ship, and fearing lest they should fall into the quicksand, strake sail, and so were driven. Again, it's in reference to sailing a ship they had taken up, or when they weighed anchor. This is the word Jesus used concerning those that were taken away. The ship was loosed, it was taken up. And so we ask the question of the expert. In Acts 27:13, does this word mean raising up of a ship? And the answer is the Greek word used for set sail, which means to lift up or take up. In this context, it refers to the sailors lifting up the anchor, hoisting the sails in order to set sail. It does not specifically refer to the rising up of a ship out of the water. However, the word can be used in other contexts to mean to rise up or to lift up, depending on the context. It could potentially be used to describe the rising up of a ship out of the water. That's the word Jesus used when they were taken, and it's in reference to Noah and those on the ark. They knew not, Noah and his family, they didn't know what was fully going on until the flood came and sailed them away, took them all away. There they go. Ariel, Hapas. Lift them up, weigh anchor, and sail. So different than when Jesus was talking to the Pharisees and he used the word apollyumi, destroyed them all. Well, when he's talking to the Pharisees, he's talking about those that died in the water. The kingdom of heaven coming has no hope for the Pharisees. But when he's talking to his beloved disciples, he says, oh, let me tell you this story from Noah's perspective, not from the people in the water's perspective. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. One shall be taken. When Jesus returns, some will be taken. What is the word that Jesus used here for taken? Well, it's perlambano, and it means taken to the kingdom. In verse 40, it says, shall be taken. And it's in reference to a husband taking his bride. Used as taking a woman as a wife. And we find it also used in Hebrews 12. Wherefore we, receiving a kingdom which cannot be moved, let us have grace. We will be taken into the kingdom. So once again, we ask the experts. Can perlambano be used in context of a wedding? The answer is yes. Perlambano could potentially be used in the context of a wedding, as it is a Greek word that means to receive or to take to oneself. Depending on the context, it could be used to describe the act of a bride and groom receiving each other in marriage, or the act of guests receiving a newly married couple at a reception. For example, a phrase like, the bride and groom perlambano each other in love and commitment could be used in a wedding ceremony script, or let us all perlambano the newlyweds with joy and celebration could be used in a wedding reception speech. And when we know that Jesus is coming to take his bride to the marriage supper of the Lamb, well, the context is all falling into place. But I know we've read this a lot, but we need to really understand, as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For in that day before the flood, there was eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and nobody knew until the flood came and floated all of them away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Then shall two be in the field, one shall be taken, the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, one shall be taken, the other left. Taken into the kingdom, taken as a bride. Watch therefore, for you, as Noah, know not what hour your Lord does come. Notice the words Jesus uses here. They're in reference to the harvest. Two shall be in the field. Two shall be grinding at the mill. These are actions that happen at the harvest time. I'd like to take a look at the Bible harvest cycle. It's very similar to our calendar, but our calendar really is in reference to the earth going around the sun and not much more. But the Bible harvest cycle is in many ways having to do with things concerning planting and harvesting. And there are certain feasts or events that take place yearly in the Bible harvest cycle. And these are for prophetic feasts: the Passover, Pentecost, Rosh Hashanah, and the Feast of Tabernacles. Let's dig a little deeper. Passover and Pentecost. Tabernacles and Rosh Hashanah. The first two are in reference to sowing seeds in the field of the Lord. And we know that Jesus died on the Passover, and the Spirit was outpoured upon the disciples and those that heard the word at Pentecost. But the finished gathering from the field of the Lord happens at the end of the season, Rosh Hashanah and Tabernacles. Used for the Festival of Tabernacles is the Feast of Ingathering. You see this in Exodus. And thou shalt observe the Feast of Weeks, even of the first fruit of the wheat harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering at the turn of the year. And the Feast of Harvest, the Feast of Ingathering, at the end of the year, when thou shalt gather, or when thou gatherest in thy labors out of the field. As the Passover and Pentecost were prophetic types, many feel that the harvest feasts are prophetic of the resurrection. I want us to look at a verse that we all know, and there's a lot of hope here. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you, I go to prepare a place for you. But we don't understand this as a Jew would understand this. So let's take a look at this through the understanding of the Jewish mind. Jesus also said, in John, and said unto them that sold doves, take these things hence. Make not my Father's house a house of merchandise. He's not talking about heaven here. He's talking about the temple, my Father's house. Jesus told his disciples, in my Father's house. And we all think he's talking about heaven, and in some ways, prophetically, he is. But it's the temple. Also in John, Jesus answered and said unto him, if a man love me, he will keep my words, and my Father will love him, and we will come unto him and make our abode with him. The word abode there is the same word in John that the English is translated mansions. Well, we all want a mansion on streets of gold, but through Jewish eyes, he's talking about a dwelling place at the temple. What does that mean? Well, we can certainly learn something concerning the Feast of Booths or Tabernacles or tents or places of abode. After you have threshed all your grain and pressed all your grapes, celebrate the festival of shelters, tabernacles, booths, for 7 days. They built small places of abode. Enjoy it with your children, your servants, the Levites, foreigners, orphans, widows that live in the towns. Honor the Lord your God by celebrating this festival at the end of the harvest for 7 days at the one place of worship. Where did they build these places of abode? In Jerusalem, at the temple. In my Father's house are many places of abode. Be joyful because the Lord has blessed your harvest and your work. This is prophetic of us going to heaven, but the reference is to the Feast of Tabernacles in Jerusalem at the end of the harvest. The Feast of Tabernacles, a time of rest at the end of the harvest. Jesus said unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of harvest that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. This is how the church began. On the 15th day of the 7th month is the Feast of Tabernacles, for 7 days unto the Lord. Of the first day shall be a holy convocation. Ye shall do no manner of servile work. At the beginning of the harvest, laborers go into the harvest to work. At the end of the harvest, the laborers are required to leave the field, go into the places of abode at the temple for 7 days, and not do any work. And Jesus references this in Matthew 24. This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Well, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the age. It's the end of the harvest. He's speaking of the harvest. And so what happens when the laborers are commanded to leave the field, do no work, and go into booths around the temple for 7 days? The hired workers leave the field, then the gleaners enter the field to gather what remains behind. The hired laborers are forbidden to take from the gleanings. It says in Deuteronomy 24, when thou gatherest the grapes of thy vineyard, thou shalt not glean it afterwards. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. When the laborers leave the field at the end of the harvest, something's left behind, and they can't go back and get it. But it will be gathered. Called the remnant harvest. We find this so beautifully portrayed in Luke. One day, Ruth said to Naomi, let me go to the fields to glean the grain that the harvest workers leave. Sometime later, Boaz himself arrived from Bethlehem to greet the workers. Boaz asked the man in charge, "Who is that young woman?" The man answered, "She is the foreigner who came back from Moab with Naomi." Boaz said to Ruth, "Let me give you some advice. Don't gather grain anywhere except in this field. There will be a gathering of a gleaned harvest in the field of the Lord after the workers have left and have gone into booths around the temple for 7 days." Now let's take a look at this verse. "Then shall two be in the field, one shall be taken, the other left. Two women grinding at the mill, one shall be taken, the other left. Watch therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord does come. Some will be taken, but the gleaners will be left. Two shall be in the field, one shall be taken, the other left." Visually, I want to make this as simple as possible. The harvest is taken out of the field. The workers leave the field. The gleaners now enter the field to pick up anything that has been left behind, and the gleaning happens during a time of burning, where the chaff is burned. Prophetically, it's going to look like this. The high priest blows the trumpet, signaling the end of the harvest and the call to the booths around the temple at the Feast of Tabernacles. And the workers leave the field. I want you to notice that it's the high priest that blows the trumpet. Jesus is the high priest. He himself will blow the trumpet. The Bible says this, that when the resurrection takes place, it is at the trump of God. The trumpet of God, the trumpet of the high priest is blown. And then the workers are taken out. They are perlambano. They are received unto the Lord as a bride unto the groom. They receive the kingdom. And then gleaners enter into the field to finish up the work that has been left behind, that the laborers are forbidden to go back to get. But there will be those that were not ready when the Lord came. And this happens during a time of burning. John the Baptist says the exact same thing. We read this in Matthew chapter 3. When John saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees come to his baptism, he said unto them, O generation of vipers, who has warned you to flee from the wrath to come? He that cometh after me is mightier than I. He shall baptize you with the Holy Ghost and with fire, whose fan is in his hand, and he will thoroughly purge his floor. This is in reference to the gleaning, how that not one straw, not one grain of value is going to be left behind. He will gather his wheat into the garner. He's going to have a great harvest that's going into the barns. But he will burn the chaff with unquenchable fire. There's going to be a harvest. There's going to be those that come into the kingdom, and there are those that are going to be judged. Well, those are the two stories that we see in the telling by Jesus of what happened at the flood. There were those that drowned, and there are those that sailed away. The high priest blows the trumpet, the workers leave the field, the gleaners enter the field, and the chaff is burned. we close with this. After Noah and his family got out of the ark, Noah built an altar to the Lord. The odor of the sacrifice pleased the Lord, and he said to himself, "Never again will I put the earth under a curse because of what people do. Never again will I destroy all living beings as I have done this time." Now we know there's a time of judgment coming, but God says, as long as the world exists, there will be a time for planting and a time for harvest. You want to be in the planting of the Lord. You want to be in that harvest, whether it be when the trumpet sounds and you are gathered into the barns, or if you should remain behind after the rapture, then the gleaners, or maybe you will become a gleaner, will come and get the rest. I hope this clears things up for some of you concerning certain points concerning prophecy that many have stumbled over. Lord bless you.